Well, Ollie Wood, it's so great for you to be here with us on the Change Room podcast today. And firstly, before we kick off, I know I've just shared a bit of your bio, but tell us how you actually got into working with the over 40 crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Jen, awesome to be on the podcast. Excited to dive in. And I love the name of the podcast too. I think this idea of just the change room really being part of an identity shift is kind of cool too. So
Yeah.
For where I sort of dove into, like, I'm clearly not an over 40 woman, right? Like, I think that's quite obvious, hopefully, talking to me.
Yep.
But getting an idea of why that was an area I was inspired in, I think was something that, you've heard this story before, but getting an idea of how I was one of those hyperactive kids that kind of was involved in every sport, right? And at some point, I managed to get into triathlons. My mum decided to join me. And it was really, really fun to have kind of something there where we did together. And this was sort of pre-menopause for her, or what I didn't know at the time, but clearly hormones were still functioning, still felt like her body was on her side. And as we started to get a bit more competitive, we started to do a couple more of them. I started to notice that she wasn't really responding the same way. She was starting to skip meals. She was training twice as hard, but she was noticing her times go backwards, right? She starts to notice she's more flustered, more stressed at things. And that just put a lot of question marks around, like, hang on, well, clearly this is quite different. And there's more to this than just aging, right? And what I, at the time, thought was, okay, as we get old, we must get better at endurance because everyone keeps doing longer distances. Mm-hmm. And once I got into the personal training space, after a couple of years in the commerce space, and I actually went to uni for a business degree, found myself back in a personal training space where I just obsessed about movement and was going through everything to optimize how the muscle function, how to make the most of the time you spent in the gym, all of those things, just how I'm wired. I'm going to go really, really deep into any topic I do. But same thing came through, right? I was working with these women in their 40s and 50s. They were high performing. They ran companies. They were managing other people, all of these things. And they were some of the hardest workers in the room, but they weren't getting the results, right? They were seeing that, we could optimize every aspect of that progression in their workouts, but because I wasn't addressing nutrition, or I noticed that they were more stressed walking through the door, and there were all these other aspects that they were working so hard, but they simply weren't getting the results, right? So I'd seen this pattern come through a couple of times, and clearly I was wired to go deeper into these topics and understand what was happening. And I'm sure you've found this frustration at times, but every study on the planet seems to be done with 20-year-old males, right?
Yes.
So the lack of actual scientific data behind how should you exercise, how should you eat, and how do we understand how to navigate this whole process that is menopause, right? Yeah. So it became a whole deep hole of understanding what was truly going on. And what ultimately happened with my training once I learned more and more there was I went from a space that was 100% exercise to 80% exercise, 20% nutrition, and then 50% lifestyle design, 50% exercise, right? To the point that I'd have a certain client come through the door and I'd hand them my headphones and say, I want you to do a meditation before we get started, just to check in with you. Because we get to this point that we are so stressed and inflamed that it doesn't matter how hard I train you in the gym, that's just becoming more of a stressor on the body throughout your day.
Yeah.
Right. So that was really how Body Reset came to be, all this understanding of really the integration in health. Because I think, especially in today's world, we've gone from, if you're in your mid 40s and 50s now, you've gone through this whole history of fat's bad, sugar's bad, salt's bad, like where the hell do I start? What way's up, right? And then we move into a space of, okay, now we have all this information, we can start learning things. What is menopause? Should I go fasting? Should I go higher fat, right? All of these things that start to challenge these old beliefs. But the problem is we start to get these little pockets of information all over the show, but we never truly integrate them together, right? So how we exercise is never integrated into how we eat or how we sleep, right? All of these components that typically get very disrupted when we are aware these hormones are changing. So for me, I understood this was such a huge field. Unless I spent 10 years in every direction trying to understand these, it really became a culmination of certain experts in our space. So as you know, after being in our world for a little while, you'll start to see how we have experts in nutrition and blood work and gut health, and really trying to bring this collective picture together. Because I think the true issue today is not just sifting through the information to find what's accurate, right? That's hard enough in itself. But now we need to find what's accurate and make it relevant to our age and stage of life. And that's really my progression into how I got into it, as it was just trying to close the loop on all these unanswered questions and trying to understand, okay, if these women are working hard and they truly want to show up as their best, they're simply not getting the answers or the results they're after. So let's start there.
Yeah, so good. And I think that's what really attracted me to you, is I saw your ad on Instagram And then you had a challenge. And after a couple of days of the challenge, I'm like, this is what I need, because it's a lifestyle change, not just a diet. And that was the issue with me. And I think with lots of women in my stage of life, we're so used to going on a diet, like it's been our life since we were 18, I suppose, because back then it was about being skinny. And thankfully it's not that anymore. And in my journey, I felt strong is what I want to be, is strong, but strong bones, strong muscles. But yeah, so and you talking about habits and the mindset around what you're actually doing with your life, not just food and not just exercise. It was about lifestyle. And that really attracted me to what you were doing, because I needed something like that, because my life has changed so much. I don't have kids to look after. I live by myself, and I can pretend all I want about what I'm doing with my life, but my body shows it. I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't exercising regularly. And after 2 years of COVID and 2 years of just lying down and kind of eating for comfort, I just enough is enough. I was so dissatisfied with my health. And last year I was sick with COVID and then ongoing infections. And I just thought, when I used to lift weights and be in the gym and eat well and sleep well, I never got sick. I hardly ever got sick. And so it really just showed to me how far I had strayed away from that. So yeah. And I think the thing is, we revert to what worked. We try to do what we did when we were younger, but it just doesn't work for us. And it just
one of the things you've said there as well, right, is your body keeps the score, and it's not just what's happening physically, but what's happening mentally as well. And trying to get those two back in tune, I think, makes a significant difference. And that awareness of moving from skinny to strong, and really the shifting the goal, is a really beautiful part of moving away from the. I think one of the biggest frustrations that come through with women is they're trying to get back to the 20-year-old version of themselves rather than building the new 50-year-old, 60-year-old version of them, right? And I think when we're able to control the narrative of the internal chatter, will absolutely dive down that route, because it really becomes something that we get to do, not something we have to do. And I think just that itself will completely change how you look and how you feel in your own skin. But when we look at it through the lens of strength, there's a more empowering nature behind the habits that we start to build in our day. And that was that five-day challenge you went through was, okay, what are these little things I can chip away in my day? It doesn't need to be an hour workout, and a lot of times it shouldn't be. It's really a case of building that back up.
Yeah. And one other thing that I found so refreshing with the Body Reset program is that and I'm still on it, it's a 12-month thing, is that I'm just, for the listeners, it's not just a 6-week challenge or something like that, is that, now I've lost my train of thought. Is that you're not trying to change everything all at once. Like when with anything else that you sign up with or for, they tell you you've got to do this all on day one. And it's like, it's overwhelming for your brain. You just can't even, And I think I want, when I last had a success in like getting healthy and all of that, I went on a 12-month program, and and it was just shifting one habit every 2 weeks and habit stacking. And that really worked well for me, because it was creating something that was well thought out, and that just, I wasn't used to this slow and steady. I'm hyperactive, ADHD. I'm more the hare than the tortoise. And so it's learning to be a tortoise.
It's the best phrase that I think even changed or is built into the DNA of the program now is slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? And I think when we build that space of just those habits that build up, I think, we'll have a conversation around the 3 or 4 month mark, and clients say, this is so simple. And I said, well, why would you want anything else, right? Like, it should so that we can build this up over time. And I think, as we've talked about, is it's not just about information being accurate, it's about it being relevant for your age and stage of life, or in what order, right? Because I think many of us start with, okay, well, let's drop calories through the floor or train harder. and our body's just not in a position to actually respond. So we end up having to work twice as hard. We starve ourselves twice as much, and we don't see the results moving forward. So that simplicity built on top of, okay, well, no, I want you to start with this step first. Like, I know you want to work on this one, but let's get step two and three in place first. And that just allows you to build that up over time. And I think that's a significant shift in allowing you to get your body back on your side. It doesn't need to be some big magic pill. And you probably have seen this in the program. Like, we're not presenting that as the one thing.
No.
It's a compounding effect of building this up in a catered manner.
Yes, it's great, I've got to say, because I have a hugely busy life, and I think the thing that I love is that you've got people on the journey with you that check in with you regularly, and if something's not working, they look at why and have a conversation and ask you questions like, have you done this? Or, and it's not necessarily something that I'm not doing. It could be just that it doesn't work for me and I've just got to tweak it. Do you know what I mean? So one example was I was trying to, pardon me. One example was that I was trying to go to the gym after work, and that just didn't work. So I set my alarm earlier, went to the gym early in the morning, and that actually set me on a real trajectory for success for the whole day. And so, yes, that's
it makes a big difference, right? When you're looking at it through, I think one of the stresses a lot of people have is, what's my morning routine and what are all the things I need to do before 9 a.m. And, I've seen both where, I love the idea of moving the workout from end of the day to start of the day, and you coming from, a weight training background before, obviously you're already comfortable with this, but there's going to be a difference between, at the end of the day, I might be stronger if I've had the perfect day, but I'm actually busy now and my life's quite different to what it was 10 years ago. So I need to actually reprioritize where I'm going to add that in the day. And if I do it in the morning, potentially I have less variables to fight off, right? So whether from home or gym, it just allows you to adjust those orders or reallocate where they are in your day. But I think the other part of that is, try not to make it 10 things before 9 a.m. Find the one thing that lights you up, makes you feel great. Because I can't tell you how many people I've had come through and say, I'm doing all these things before 9 a.m. and I'm not feeling better. I'm like, it's because you're trying to do all of it, which defeats the purpose of, putting yourself first in simplicity. At this point, it's just become another obligation. And I think that's why I'm going to continue to emphasize that idea of something you get to do, not something you have to, because it really starts to get you, it significantly changes your whole muscle tone, like your tightness and stress that you hold throughout the day, when it's something that actually flows a bit better.
Yes. I think one thing is we don't realize how stress causes us not to be able to shift anything when we're concerned about our weight. Can you talk about stress and how that affects us?
Yeah, well, we can break this down in a lot of different ways. And you mentioned before, hormones and how they play a role. And I think the really big shift that I think help a lot of women around how they think about hormones in their body is hormone response is very much just that. It's a response to how everything else is functioning. So if you're underslept, you're undernourished, or you're not eating, you're stressed out all day, that's all going to have a significant impact on how your body operates. So stress is something that I'm sure if you've been in this space for any length of time, you're aware that it's going to be potentially detrimental to health, but it's also how you look at it. So what I mean by that is if you break stress down, we're going to look at it through three categories. One, we're going to look at that through physical, i.e. how you're moving and exercising. Two, we're going to look at that at psychological stress, right? That's you angry in traffic, or you've just had an argument with your partner, or whatever that might be. And then number three is digestive. And I think being able to clarify stress being three things simply allows you to get an awareness of, okay, well, stressing less is not particularly helpful, right? If I tell Jen, stop stressing so much, I'm like, thanks, Ollie, that was really helpful. Right? And I think there's a component to that where we can actually look through a hormonal adjustment where as progesterone drops, if you're someone going through menopause right now, or you're on the other end of that, that's something that's actually had a significant difference to your tolerance of stress. And I'm going to completely oversimplify this concept, but it hopefully helps us move home, is testosterone is something that increases post-menopause or intramenopause, where it has a higher ratio of overall hormones in your body, which is where you start to notice more fat around the waist as opposed to the stomach. You start to see sort of undulations and eventually decline in estrogen. That has a significant impact in insulin sensitivity and your ability to use carbohydrates. So again, you don't utilize them as well as you used to. Yeah. So even if you were eating well before and you were having a lovely muesli or oats for breakfast, maybe that doesn't work so well anymore, right? Yep. And then progesterone starts to decline, and that has a significant impact on stress levels or your tolerance to stress. All right. Again, completely oversimplified, but I think those three categories allow you to conceptualize what's happening there. So when we look at it through the lens of stress and why it comes through so much around menopause or trying to get your body back on your side is because your body is significantly shifting and you are operating with a new biology. So being able to, if we step back to those three stresses again, right? Physical, digestive, and psychological, we get to address stress through three areas. Now, before we do, I want to first clarify, is stress bad? Well, no. At some point, it's a sweet spot, right? And this is something you've heard me say before. If you get Ollie sitting on a beach for 3 days, that's nice. But anything longer, I'm going to be a bit fidgety and I need to get back to doing something.
Yes. Yep.
And I think many of us are like that. Yeah, because there needs to be some level of purpose or drive or something to do, right?
Yes.
And whereas if we go the other end and we've got 100 projects on our schedule today and we just can't focus, well, clearly that's gone too far, and that's that chronic stress that starts to last days, weeks, etc. And that, of course, is going to be detrimental to the body and only make those undulations and hormone shifts, worse and more of those symptoms to come through, right? So where we start is understanding that stress is not a level, but a threshold. And when we're able to shift that perspective, we get an idea that it is truly a sweet spot, one, but also it's something that can be lowered or increased through our ultimately activities in our day. So when we look at that through, your shift of moving your workout from after work to start of work, well, now there becomes maybe a shift and my day feels a little bit easier. I actually do feel less stressed because I'm doing something before the day starts. And there's an important shifter there where you're actually doing something before, say, 9 a.m. that you are choosing your own stress before the day starts. Now, that itself makes a significant difference because it now creates ultimately a discrepancy between the challenge that was really quite acute but significant versus the low-level stress that we experience through our day, right? So whether that is a weight training workout, that is maybe a quick HIIT session, less common in the sort of menopausal space, but can still be helpful, or even a cold shower, right? Something there that's like getting the body working, we're kind of woken up a little bit, that can make a significant difference to that discrepancy of stress in the day. So when we come back to stress is not a level, but a threshold, we have just raised the threshold, all right? And that's an important shift around how I look at stress. And I think for most high functioning humans allows you to allocate a certain energy towards your exercise, not just from a body composition element, but also how you tackle the day. All right. So I think that makes a big difference. And then if we circle back to, stress as a whole, realizing that, if you're able to bring the awareness to a stressor in a particular scenario, but not allowing it to really shift your day or you to continue thinking about it for the rest of the day, I think that makes a big difference. But also understanding that stress comes from digestive aspects, meaning if you're eating foods that you're actually have got a slight sensitivity to, or you feel a bit inflamed, that is in a very real way a stressor on the body, right? So whether it's you holding on to a stress that happened at 9 a.m. and it's happening all day, or whether it's something that you ate that actually made your gut feel a bit gurgly, you felt you're a bit more bloated, now that becomes a stressor in the day also, right? So when we look at stress through those three spheres, I think that gives you a much better awareness of, okay, well now stress is something I can actually control or feel more aware of and manage, rather than simply this unhelpful, like stress is bad, can you stress less, please?
Yeah, no, because I know a great difference between the euphoric eustress and distress. They have although they have similar like adrenal, I suppose, effects, they feel very different in how they affect you. And so give me euphoria any day. And so I think one thing that I find is that there's a lot of women in my space, probably because like attracts like, high, like the women you alluded to that you met, your clients, business owners, like they have the capacity in their mind to actually do whatever it takes to actually make things happen. But they're so angry and frustrated because nothing seems to happen. And I've seen it, number one, because they're used to that, like we've spoken about, like the diets of no sugar or like low fat, all that sort of stuff. And so, and no eating almost. So eat, like, go on vegetable detoxes and like
you get 2 almonds and a piece of lettuce, right?
Yes. It's like, why? And I said, no, go eat protein. You need to have protein for breakfast and protein for lunch and protein for dinner, as well as vegetables and fiber. I said, if you do that sort of stuff and have some potatoes at night, it'll do good to you. Good. Look, I know I'm not giving advice, but I'm just saying it actually makes you feel good. My favorite thing is potatoes, right? And and one of the reasons why I couldn't continue on what I was doing is they wouldn't allow, like the eating program would not allow carbs, and I couldn't do that anymore. And I wanted to punch someone's lights out because I couldn't eat potatoes. I know I'm passionate. Food is my love language, right? So yes, so I encourage people to eat potato at night with their
one
meal.
of the things I think you're alluding to as well is this awareness of fueling the day rather than starving it, right? And I think one of these things that is so common in the space, and this is actually across the board, but I think prominent through females going through hormonal shifts, simply because it does become a not necessarily harder, but a tighter window in which you have room for error, right?
Yes.
And when we look at it through the lens of drastic measures through diets, right? We've got carnivore on one side, we've got vegetarian on the other, and nothing in between seems to work, right? Whereas typically, when you've got those extremes, and this, you can use this analogy in so many areas in life, when you have two extremes, usually somewhere in the middle is a better option.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a huge aspect here where when the body's not working, more must work, right? And I'm sure you see this in your space too, is especially with business owners and high functioning professionals, there is a level of all or nothing that just tends to be wired into how you operate.
Yes.
And it's likely got you a certain amount of success in some area of your life. You've simply applied this to the wrong field. And looking at it through the lens of weight training, which Jen, you've been in for a while, is looking at weight training through the lens, if you really simplify it down, it's the pursuit of continually finding failure and then going again, right? Like it's literally all it is. Because if you don't find failure, and what I mean by that is, you're finishing a set to the point that you can no longer do another rep, i.e. failure of that set, your body is not going to change, right? So if you always stay comfortable, you always stay within the zone of 10 reps when you really know you had 14, you're not really going to get the result. And when we apply that to things like nutrition, right, it's literally making the best of the scenarios in an imperfect world. It's not about not failing. It's about how little can we, how much can we navigate our life in order to be locked in on the approach, locked in on the outcome, flexible on the approach.
Yeah.
And when we're able to approach that whole health space with a different mindset of, like I mentioned, you get to, you don't have to. And it's about minimizing the hiccups, not through the actions itself, but typically through the mental chatter that makes that sort of elongate. Because what happens is eating the cookie wasn't that damaging, but you stressing about the cookie you ate for the next 2 days is.
Yes.
Right? And when we make these drastic measures to fast for the following day or double up on the workouts or whatever that might do, in a very real way, we're just adding more additional stress to the fire. If we're doing that, the overall picture of how your body works, it's going to get to a point where it just flicks into that survival mode of, okay, well, this is no longer, a relaxing state to be. I'm going to stay in this fight or flight mode longer. I'm going to hold on to all the body fat, and I'm going to be as stubborn as possible to hold on to what I have. And we just continue to drop food down. We continue to exercise harder and harder. And then we notice we're getting more brain fog. We're, forgetting where we put our keys. All of these things start to come through as just very real signals of your body saying like, oh, I'm holding on for now.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And I think that's the thing, the difference between the long game versus the 6 or 8 week challenge is that I love it because I love it. Kind of alludes, it's not boring. Like, let me back up. I love it because it's like the Groundhog Day movie where at first he was like, not this again. And it would like rebel against it and like punch people and like, get frustrated. But then he realized he had opportunity in that to try things, to see what it would do. It's like that with the long game, is that if something doesn't work, you get up in the next morning, I got you, babe. and you actually try something different and look at how that works. And then you'll find that it does work because you're not stressed out or it may not work.
You're giving yourself permission to be bad before you be good, right? And I think that's a huge part where with a 6-week challenge, we expect, okay, all of those bad habits, I'm going to forget about it now. I'm going to be perfect for 6 weeks, right? And like, when was that ever the idea, right? And I
Yeah.
think the big problem is, especially even if it does happen, like if you do truly make it perfect, you've got the perfect time frame, nothing goes wrong, you nail it. You've actually still learned nothing because you haven't applied it to what real life looks like for you in a busy
Yes.
scenario, right?
Yes.
And I think that in itself, you've just nailed that thought process, I think, because it is awareness of if you can still nail that 20%, 50% while
Yeah.
things are busy and just hold on to those non-negotiables when
Yeah.
things are less than ideal or just straight up terrible, you now have built the skill of reinforcing your North Star rather than letting the internal chatter beat you up to the point of changing course. And I
Yeah.
think when you're able to do that, that in itself is where a little bit of structure, a little bit of trusting the process and giving yourself permission to trip up a couple of times in order to learn the long game makes a really big difference in you succeeding.
Yeah. Like I think one of the things that I found so refreshing at the beginning of the program, and even now still, is just do a 10-minute walk
Yep.
every day. And just half-ass is better than no ass. Because like I've been doing programs, so I sit all day because I'm an accountant. I run multiple businesses, so I sit a lot, and so doing 10,000 steps is not something that's possible necessarily, in the timeframes. But doing 10 minutes I can do, and I can
Yep.
do 20 because I'm out on the path.
Yep.
I can go in the surf for 20 minutes. And enjoy that. And, and that for me is, yes, it's that I get to, but I just found it, I kind of could exhale because, and I find I am still finding that I'm succeeding even now. Like now that I haven't been eating, I went off dairy and gluten and sugar and alcohol, and that has shifted me. I dropped 5 kilos just shifting those things. And sleep, go to bed early and get up early, and that has made a big difference. And even just those things without the exercise part, I dropped 5 kilos. Yep. And I'm told I haven't even begun on the weight loss section, like the fat burning section.
But there's a really important part of that point. If we come back to the 10,000 steps versus 10 minutes, that I think is important as well, right? Which comes to the very point of like something you look forward to doing rather than something you're forced to do. Is I can't tell you how many clients I've seen come to us after previously doing a program where it's like, I was doing the diet, I was nailing this every day, and I just wasn't dropping weight, right? My body was getting stubborn, and it comes back to that stress response before. Mm-hmm. And, if I set you the goal right now, Jen, of doing 10,000 steps a day or 15,000 steps a day, because 10,000 wasn't working, like you probably find a way to fit in your day, but you would start to see how your work would decline, your general sense of satisfaction would likely decline. And when you're walking, it's no longer going to be a space where you're enjoying a walk. It's going to be like, I have to get in another 10,000 steps and I'm not breathing, right? Which just kind of defeats the whole purpose entirely, right? So you being able to go for a 10 or 20-minute walk and you're like, oh, I'm actually enjoying a bit of sun, really nice to get off my bum and move a little bit more before I go back. Like it actually becomes that relaxation response that was actually required initially. And I think that's where that mindset of it's not doing the things, it's the state to which you're doing things that makes a significant difference. And I think when you shift that, whether it's a walk or it's you drinking some water in the morning or changing where you have that workout, it is truly just being a case of, well, this works for me and my body feels less reactive to the outside world. I actually feel like I'm truly doing something for me now. And I think just reinforcing that response at a visceral level, I think makes a difference in how your body's going to respond.
And I think also just being open to even seasonally changing things. Like in winter, you may not be able to get out of bed in the morning because the sun's not up. Well, go do your workout at lunchtime instead, or in the afternoon. Like lunchtime's probably a good time because you have that, you can tend to have that dive in, brain
and
capacity.
Even that,
and all
right,
that
is what worked for you 6 months ago. And this is why 12 months works so beautifully, is you don't get so locked into like, okay, well, this worked for 16 weeks. So this is me like locked in for life. It's what you eat in summer compared to what you eat in winter should actually change, right? You might notice that in summer, you can actually get away with a bit more carbohydrates than winter, although I wouldn't test that theory too far. No. That idea of maybe there's different colors and flavors and fruits that are in season, right? That should be a natural rotation of foods that you have. Because if your lunch only ever consists of chicken and broccoli, please don't do that. It'll bring a level of blandness and lack of stimulation ultimately to your day that you'll now look forward to the burger on a Friday or Saturday, right? Whereas if you have this like nice, vibrant, tasteful meal at lunchtime, it becomes something you can eat every day, and you see a new fruit or a new veggie and you start rotating things in. That in itself becomes something that I get to do. It's something I enjoy.
Very good. Well, we've spoken through lots of different topics, but I'd love for you just to summarize 5 things that are important for women of my listeners in the stage that they are, like 5 things from your point of view.
Yeah. 5's a lot. I'm going to start with...
Do 3 then.
I'm going to do 3.
Yes.
I think the first one you mentioned before, getting to the point of having protein with every meal. There's all sorts of things that come up with that. Can't be that simple. I don't want to put on muscle, whatever else comes through, right? There's a lot of beliefs around nutritional adjustments that I think it's worth stating that the biggest part of learning is probably unlearning, right? All the things that you think are true that actually aren't, or that used to be true that are no longer true. And I think going through that process, something like having protein with every meal usually highlights a lot of those internal shadows coming through. So what that's doing for you, it's not making you the next bodybuilder or Mr. Olympia, or Mrs. Olympia. It's simply taking you through that process of fueling the body, fueling hormones, fueling that cellular repair, making sure that the body and immune system and all of these other things are actually operating at a high degree. When we do that, we now have a body that's functioning with us rather than against us. And in that itself, a calculation, if you really want to start here, somewhere between, I usually say 1.5 to 2 grams, but let's go 1.8 as a general space we start. 1.8 grams per kilo of body weight becomes a really nice awareness of maybe where you should start. Now, you don't need to track that with every meal. You could, and maybe it's a good idea for a couple of weeks. But by simply using that as an awareness or a checkpoint of how much you're eating, it's very likely that 95% of your listeners are under eating him, right? And it highlights that many of us are in a space of restriction, fasting, whatever else it might be called, where they're simply not giving themselves enough of a window to fuel the body with the nutrients required in the day, right? And whether that's a lack of protein or a lack of food overall, when we start to suppress the body over a long enough time, or it really doesn't have to be that long, couple of weeks, our body will simply adjust down to the new level. All right. And what happens is we end up just adjusting down, body adjusts, adjusting down, body adjusts. And we back ourselves into a corner where we're now eating 800 calories. Our body's still not dropping body fat. And then when we go back to normal, we just put all this body fat on, even if it was the old level we used to eat at. Right. So bit of a tangent to say, first start is looking at adding in at least 1.8 grams per kilo of body weight of protein in your day so that you're truly fueling that day. Now, please, please, please don't make it just chicken and salad. Add some foods in there, your olive oils, your avocados, your quinoa, like whatever works to really make sure you're getting some rotation in food sources. You're getting some high quality whole foods in your meal. And your body will start to, over the course of 2 to 6 weeks, start to more accurately adjust to what you should be eating on a day-to-day basis, meaning you start to trust yourself again. You know what full feels like, because if you've been through all the diets in the past and you've gone up and you've gone down, you get to a point where you no longer trust where full really is, because your hunger hormones are all over the show, right? And just giving yourself time to regulate that response will make a significant difference, all right? So big answer, Jen, but first one, really that protein with each meal, all right? The second one, and I think this is so under sort of promoted simply because it's not something I can package in a pill and sell to you, right? It hasn't been marketed in this way, and it's simply your own breath. Now, when we look at breath, what we have the ability to do is manage or at least feel more in tune with our nervous system throughout the day. When we're able to understand the difference between us being in that fight or flight response and our shoulders are a little bit higher or a little bit more tight in our chest, we maybe are breathing through our mouth and a bit more shallow, and we're able to simply breathe in and get rid of that in 3 to 5 breaths is all you really need. And applying that to when you wake up and before meals can be one of the biggest differences in your body being able to actually absorb the nutrients you're eating rather than simply eating some food and your body not truly being able to digest it. And what's happening there is your body is, if you're in a fight or flight response, you're stressed out, you've just had an argument, you're rushing towards the next meeting and you're trying to eat a meal versus you eating the exact same meal in a calm, rest and digest state, drastically different, right?
Mm.
So simply doing that thing to just tune in with you before a meal could be the single best thing to take you from eating a healthy meal to actually absorbing a healthy meal and making the most of your day. All right. So that's step number 2. Step number 3, and this is something, Jen, that we've gone through quite a lot this side of the year, right? We went through the buy back your time principle, the time blocking process, this idea of like, we all know that we should fit ourselves in our day, but how do we take that from an intention to an actual action or something that is visible in my day, right?
Yeah.
Time blocking, right? Taking your to-do list to a time block is the simple best thing you can do from taking it from an idea to an action plan with a time frame. And I think the big shift that we have here is we go from trying to fit everything into the day to giving ourselves adequate time to do the things we say we will. And when we do that, we're simply creating a better decision-making framework with when things will be placed in the day and how we are better allocating time. Because if we block out 30 minutes at lunch to actually sit down and have a meal, it might end up being 20 minutes or 15 minutes, but it's still 15 minutes you didn't have before. And when we start to, in your case, multiple businesses, the workouts that you want to get in, the time you want to spend with your family, all of these things, if you have that in 5 different calendars, good luck trying to get it all done, right?
Yeah.
When you can make it one, like this is Jen's action plan for the week, of course, there's going to be adjustments, and you should only really get to the point that I think fill up 80% of your calendar, leave that wiggle room for what will eventually happen. But being able to have those intentions of what's the one thing I need to tick off my work this week to make my business move forward? What's the one thing I need to do for my health this day that if I did 1,000 days in a row, I would be further away, I'd be further or closer to my goal, right? So I think just asking those questions, I think a lot of people do, but now let's translate that to what your day actually looks like. So you have a very tangible outlook of what you can get done in your day and where you're going to fit you.
Yeah, wonderful. I love it. And it's good to know I'm on the right track.
Good.
Finally. No, it's very good. So one question I asked, which I haven't preempted with you, and you alluded to it at the beginning, was when you think of the change room, what does that mean for you?
It's something I shared with our community a long time ago, and I don't know why, but it comes to my mind straight away, which is in order to become the person you want to become, you need to kill off the version you used to be. And I think in the change room, it simply is, for me, it very quickly becomes an identity shift. And in order to fully experience the new version you need to be, there usually needs to be a challenging of old beliefs that are no longer serving you. So I think it's a beautiful encapsulation of just really that shift in identity and realizing that if you want to become the surfer, it becomes a lot more than you just wearing the t-shirt. There's some other things that do the shift.
Yeah, very good. Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time today and your wisdom. And I don't know what it is about you. Like, I feel really at home and safe with you and with my journey, because I think because you saw what was happening with your mum and then with other women, and you got curious about that, and you didn't just write it off and just be, anyway, you didn't just write it off for something that they weren't telling you. You actually saw beyond that, and then you looked at the science and got curious about that. I think it feels like you're for us, like for your clients. And I love the fact that the community is people of my age. I'm not the oldest one in the room, like on your calls and different things. There's people of all different walks of life, but they're all over 45, and they're all obviously got their own challenges in life, but they're doing it, because they want to be here so that they can see their grandchildren or, do the things that they've always wanted to do and haven't yet picked off their bucket list. So I really want to thank you for your time and for your wisdom today, and just share with us how people can get in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first I want to say thank you. Like I'm someone that takes a long time to learn something, but once I do, I really try to learn it deep, and being able to simply understand what's truly going on, and then being able to share this with women that are actually in a very physical and mental way, seeing that impact and have that ripple effect on every area of their life. It's pretty fun. And I really enjoy where I'm at right now, where We have an incredible team. We're helping hundreds of clients on any given day, and we're actually creating true change that I know is still working in 2 or 3 years from now. And I know that because I'm catching up with clients that used to be in the program and like, I'm still crushing it. I'm feeling amazing, and I'm continuing to move in the right direction. So that lights me up every day. Like, I couldn't think of anything better to do in my day. So it's a really cool place to be a part of, and amazing that it shows through. So thank you for that. In regards to, if you want to find out more about us, if you want us any sort of help in this space, I think simply going to our website, bodyreset.online, would be the best place to start. We give away a lot of free resources. Our podcast is something that we've put up a podcast a week for about 5 years, really diving into the nitty gritty of what we do on a day-to-day basis, and truly gives away so much of what we do that if you simply applied, you could make a significant difference to how you look and feel. So the podcast, simply search Body Reset on any of your major platforms or bodyreset.online, and you can go through the same 5-day challenge that Jen did to really just understand how we do it, what to start with, and make some change for you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Ollie, and look forward to seeing you on my next Zoom with you.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed today, Jen. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.